The awakening signal. The void between stars held secrets that most species preferred to ignore. Admiral Kethis Vorn understood this truth better than most as he stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Stellar Dominance, watching the endless black of space through reinforced viewing ports. His scaled blue skin caught the soft glow of instrument panels, each ridge along his elongated skull marking years of military service to the Zephyrian Empire. For 3 standard cycles, his patrol fleet had maintained watch over Sector Epsilon 7, a contested region where old battlefields littered space with the remains of forgotten wars. 50 ships of various classes formed his command, from sleek interceptors to massive dreadnoughts, all bearing the crimson and gold markings of Zephyrian authority. This was routine work, boring work, the kind of assignment given to reliable commanders who asked few questions and followed orders without complaint. Captain Nexar Quinn approached from the tactical station, his movements precise despite the artificial gravity that never quite felt natural after years in space. Unlike his admiral, Nexar bore the ritual scars of the warrior caste across his arms, each mark representing a victory in personal combat. His yellow eyes reflected concern as he handed Vorn a data tablet. "Admiral, we're detecting an anomaly in grid reference 847 Delta," Nexar reported, his voice carrying the formal tone required in the presence of superior officers. Long-range sensors picked up an energy signature approximately 47 minutes ago. It's unlike anything in our database. Vorn studied the readings with practiced attention. The energy pattern showed irregular pulses, almost organic in nature, emanating from what appeared to be a derelict asteroid field. Their sensors indicated massive metallic structures hidden within the floating debris, but the composition readings made no sense. The metals seemed to shift and change even as they watched, defying basic principles of matter stability. "Could be a trap," Vorn mused, running one clawed finger along the edge of the tablet. "Pirates have been known to use energy lures to draw patrol fleets into ambush positions. What's our tactical assessment?" Nexar gestured toward the main display screen, where a 3-dimensional map showed their fleet's position relative to the anomaly. "Negative probability of ambush, sir. The energy output is too consistent for conventional technology, and there are no other ships within sensor range. However, the readings suggest something much larger than a typical pirate vessel." Before Vorn could respond, the communications officer called out from across the bridge. "Admiral, the energy signature is intensifying rapidly. Whatever's out there, it's powering up." The main screen flickered and changed to show the asteroid field in enhanced detail, and what they saw defied immediate explanation. Among the floating rocks and ancient debris, a massive structure was beginning to emerge. It moved with deliberate slowness, shedding chunks of asteroid that had apparently served as camouflage for decades or perhaps centuries. The ship that revealed itself was unlike anything in current galactic databases. Its hull appeared to be composed of a dark, almost organic material that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Smooth curves dominated its design, with no visible weapon ports or engine exhausts. Yet it moved through space with purposeful grace. Most disturbing of all, it was enormous, easily 3 times the length of Vorn's flagship. "By the void," Nexar whispered, his scarred hands instinctively moving toward his sidearm. "What is that thing?" Before anyone could answer, their communications array crackled to life with an incoming transmission. The voice that emerged spoke in accented galactic standard, with pronunciation patterns that seemed somehow ancient. "Zephyrian vessels, this is Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth exploration ship New Horizon. We mean no harm and request peaceful passage through this sector." Vorn felt his blood chill at the word Earth. Every military officer in the galaxy had heard stories of the humans, the mysterious species that had appeared briefly in galactic affairs 2 centuries ago before vanishing without explanation. Most assumed they had been destroyed in the great purges that followed the Andorian Wars, but official records were classified beyond his security clearance. "This is Admiral Kethis Vorn of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy," he responded, trying to keep his voice steady. "You are trespassing in restricted military space. Identify your intentions and prepare for inspection." The response came with what sounded like amusement. "Admiral Vorn, we appreciate your dedication to duty, but we've been monitoring your patrol, Croats, for some time now. Your restricted space encompasses regions that were open trade routes when your empire was still learning to smelt metal. Nexar moved closer to the admiral, speaking in a low voice. Sir, they claim to have been watching us. That's impossible unless they have technology far beyond our detection capabilities. I heard them, Captain, Vorn replied curtly, then activated the communication system again. Commander Chen, you will submit to inspection or face the consequences. This is not a negotiation. The human's laughter came through clearly, and it sent an uncomfortable chill through the bridge crew. Admiral, you have 50 ships under your command, including 12 heavy cruisers and 1 dreadnought-class flagship. Your weapons are charged, and your shields are at 60% power. You've been conducting patrol route Delta 77 for the past 3 cycles, and your supply convoy is due to arrive in 18 hours. Vorn stepped back from the communications console as if struck. The information the human had just recited was classified military intelligence, known only to his senior officers and fleet command. How do you know that? We know many things, Admiral. We've been watching, learning, preparing. Your species has shown remarkable expansion capabilities, but you've also demonstrated disturbing tendencies toward conquest rather than cooperation. We had hoped that might change. The Admiral gestured sharply to his tactical officer. Target that ship. Full weapons array. The tactical officer's hands moved across his console with trained efficiency, but after several moments, he looked up with confusion. Sir, targeting systems are experiencing interference. We can detect the ship on sensors, but our weapons can't establish a lock. Commander Chen's voice returned, now carrying a note of disappointment. Admiral, we really did hope this would go differently. Your weapons technology is impressive by current galactic standards, but you're trying to target something that exists in dimensions your sensors can't fully perceive. As if to emphasize the point, the human ship began to move in ways that violated basic physics. It rotated without apparent thrust, accelerated without visible propulsion, and seemed to phase partially out of normal space before returning to solid visibility. The graceful movements were hypnotic and terrifying in equal measure. Impossible, Nexar breathed. Nothing can move like that. Vorn's training kicked in despite his growing fear. All ships, assume attack formation. Prepare for combat engagement. Across the fleet, ships began to move into coordinated positions, their weapon systems charging and shields strengthening. The familiar dance of military precision should have been reassuring, but the Admiral found no comfort in it, as he watched the human vessel remain perfectly still, apparently unconcerned by the 50 warships now arrayed against it. Admiral, came Chen's voice again, now carrying genuine sadness. You're making the same mistake so many others have made. You see something you don't understand, and your first instinct is to destroy it. We had hoped humanity's long absence might have given the galaxy time to evolve beyond such reflexes. Lieutenant Marcus Torres, Chen's tactical officer aboard the New Horizon, watched the Zephyrian fleet's movements with practiced calm. His console displayed information that would have terrified the aliens if they could have seen it. Every ship in the enemy fleet was being analyzed in real time, their weaknesses catalogued, their capabilities assessed and found lacking. Commander, Torres reported, they're powering weapons and assuming standard attack formation. Their tactical doctrine appears unchanged from our historical records. Chen nodded, her expression thoughtful as she studied the tactical display. 200 years of galactic development, and they're still thinking in terms of superior firepower and numerical advantage. It's almost sad, Marcus. Orders, ma'am? Let's give them a demonstration. Something gentle but impressive. We don't want to start a war if we can avoid it. Torres's fingers moved over controls that incorporated technology the Zephyrians couldn't begin to understand. The New Horizon wasn't just a ship in the traditional sense. It was a fusion of human engineering and something far more advanced, something they had learned to create during their long isolation at the galaxy's edge. Aboard the Stellar Dominance, chaos erupted across multiple bridge stations simultaneously. Navigation systems began reporting impossible readings, with instruments insisting they were somehow moving in 6 different directions at once. Artificial gravity fluctuated, causing officers to grab for support as their inner ears struggled with conflicting sensory input. "What's happening?" Vorn demanded, but his crew was too busy trying to make sense of their failing systems to provide coherent answers. The main display screen flickered and was replaced by an image of Commander Chen. She appeared human in the basic sense, but there was something different about her, something that suggested she had been changed by experiences beyond normal understanding. Her dark hair was streaked with premature silver, and her eyes held depths that spoke of vast distances traveled and terrible knowledge gained. "Admiral Vorn," she said, her image crystal clear despite their communication systems showing massive interference. "What you're experiencing is a very mild demonstration of human adaptive technology. We're not attacking your ships, we're simply existing near them, and the interaction between our dimensional fields and your three-dimensional technology is causing some compatibility issues." As she spoke, officers throughout the fleet reported similar malfunctions. Weapon systems cycling through firing sequences without commands, environmental controls adjusting themselves to settings no one had requested, and most disturbing of all, ship computers beginning to display information in languages none of them recognized. "Stop this," Vorn shouted at the screen. "Cease your attack immediately." Chen's expression remained patient, almost maternal. "Admiral, if we were attacking you, you would know it. What you're experiencing is merely the presence of technology that operates according to different physical laws than your own. We spent 2 centuries learning to transcend the limitations that still bind your people." The human ship began to change before their eyes. Its hull rippled like liquid metal, sections extending and retracting as internal structures reorganized themselves. New sections materialized from apparent nothingness, while others faded into transparency. It was like watching a living thing reshape itself according to some incomprehensible purpose. "By all the ancient powers," Nexar whispered. "What are they?" "We are what humanity became when we stopped limiting ourselves to what others thought was possible," Chen answered, somehow having heard his whispered words despite closed communication channels. "We are what any species can become if they choose growth over conquest, cooperation over domination." Vorn forced himself to speak despite the fear constricting his throat. "What do you want from us?" "At this moment, simply to pass through this region and continue our journey. In the broader sense." Chen paused, and her image seemed to look directly at each bridge officer in turn. "We want the galaxy to be better than it was when we left it. We want species to learn from the mistakes of the past instead of repeating them endlessly." The Zephyrian admiral straightened, drawing on decades of military training to maintain composure in an impossible situation. "And if we refuse to let you pass?" Commander Chen's smile was gentle but carried undertones that made experienced warriors take involuntary steps backward. "Admiral, you're not in a position to refuse us anything, but that's not why we'll pass through peacefully. We'll do so because that's who we chose to become." The human ship continued its impossible transformation, growing larger and more complex by the moment, and Admiral Vorn realized with growing horror that this was only the beginning. Whatever humanity had become during their long absence, they had returned to a galaxy that was utterly unprepared for them. The Reckoning Storm. The silence that followed Commander Chen's words stretched across space like a held breath. Admiral Vorn found himself staring at the transformed human vessel, trying to comprehend what his eyes were showing him. The new horizon had grown to nearly 4 times its original size, its hull now displaying patterns of light that pulsed with organic rhythm. Most unsettling of all, he could swear the ship was looking back at them. "Sir," the communications officer called out, voice tight with stress. "We're receiving a priority transmission from Fleet Command. Admiral Zorith is requesting immediate status update." Vorn closed his eyes briefly, knowing that calling in reinforcements might be the worst decision he could make, but also recognizing that he was far beyond his ability to handle the situation alone. "Put him through." The secondary screen flickered to life, revealing the scarred visage of Fleet Admiral Zorith, Supreme Commander of the 7th Battle Group. His reputation for ruthless efficiency was legendary throughout the Empire, and his Yellow eyes held the cold calculation of someone who had never met a problem that couldn't be solved with superior firepower. Admiral Vorn, Zorith's voice carried the authority of absolute command. Explain why your patrol fleet has gone silent for over an hour, and why our long-range sensors are detecting massive energy distortions in your sector. Before Vorn could formulate a response, Commander Chen's image appeared on the same screen, somehow having accessed their secured military communications without invitation. Fleet Admiral Zorith, I am Commander Sarah Chen of the Earth vessel New Horizon. Your subordinate is facing a situation that requires wisdom rather than warfare. Zorith's expression shifted from annoyance to shock, then to something approaching. Rage. Human, I should have known. Your species should have stayed extinct. Chen's smile remained patient, but something cold flickered behind her eyes. Admiral, extinction was never our fate. Evolution was our choice. Your people have 37 minutes before your reinforcement fleet arrives. I strongly suggest you use that time wisely. The transmission ended, leaving both admirals staring at blank screens. Zorith's voice came through the audio channel, edged with deadly intent. Admiral Vorn, maintain position and keep that thing contained. I'm bringing the full 7th Battle Group. 200 ships should be sufficient to deal with one derelict human vessel. Sir, I respectfully suggest caution, Vorn began, but the channel had already closed. Aboard the New Horizon, Dr. Elena Vasquez monitored the conversation from her position at the science station. Unlike the ship's military crew, she had been part of humanity's transformation from the beginning, one of the scientists who had helped unlock the secrets that changed everything. Her augmented neural interface allowed her to communicate directly with the ship's AI consciousness, a being they called Phoenix. Phoenix, she subvocalized, analysis of incoming Zephyrian reinforcements. The AI's response came as pure thought, transmitted directly to her mind. 212 vessels, including 4 Dreadnought-class ships and 1 experimental planet killer. Their combined firepower could sterilize a small moon. However, their technology remains constrained by conventional physics. Recommendations? These beings learn through demonstration rather than explanation. Perhaps it is time they understood what humanity truly became. Dr. Vasquez nodded and turned to Commander Chen. Sarah, Phoenix suggests a more direct approach. The Zephyrians are operating from a position of assumed superiority, based on numbers and conventional tactics. Chen considered this, watching the alien fleet maintain their cautious distance. Very well, but we do this cleanly. No permanent damage, no loss of life if we can avoid it. We're not here to become the monsters they expect us to be. Lieutenant, Torres looked up from his station with a grim expression. Commander, multiple jump signatures detected. The reinforcement fleet is arriving ahead of schedule. Space around them began to ripple and tear as Zephyrian ships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. The newcomers were larger and more heavily armed than Vorn's patrol fleet, their hulls bristling with weapon arrays and defensive systems. At their center, Admiral Zorith's flagship Divine Retribution dwarfed even the largest ships in the formation. The combined Zephyrian force now numbered over 250 vessels, their combined mass creating a gravitational field that affected nearby asteroids. It was an impressive display of military might, the kind of force that had brought entire star systems to their knees. Admiral Zorith's voice boomed across all frequencies, amplified by his flagship's massive communication arrays. Human vessel, you are surrounded and outgunned. Surrender immediately or face complete annihilation. Commander Chen activated the New Horizon's external communication system, her response calm and measured. Admiral Zorith, your reputation precedes you. 17 star systems conquered, 4 civilian populations relocated, 1 genocide attempted but prevented by coalition intervention. Quite a record. Those were military necessities, Zorith snarled. Something a dying species couldn't understand. We understood perfectly, Chen replied. That's why we chose to become something else. What happened next would be discussed in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. The New Horizon began to phase in and out of visible reality, its hull flickering between solid matter and pure energy. But that was only the beginning. As the Zephyrian fleet watched in growing horror, the human ship began to multiply. Not through conventional replication, but through what appeared to be quantum duplication across parallel dimensions. One ship became 2, then 4, then 8, each one as real and solid as the original. Impossible, Zorith breathed, his tactical displays struggling to track targets that seemed to exist in multiple locations simultaneously. Dr. Vasquez monitored the process with scientific fascination. The multiplication wasn't an illusion or holographic projection. The ship was actually creating quantum echoes of itself across parallel probability streams, each one capable of independent action while remaining connected to the original consciousness. "All ships, open fire," Zorith commanded, his voice cracking with strain. The Zephyrian fleet unleashed a devastating barrage that should have vaporized anything within a light second of the target zone. Plasma cannons, particle beams, and gravitational torpedoes filled space with deadly energy, their combined output capable of destroying a small planet. When the light faded and sensors cleared, the human ships remained untouched. Around each vessel, a shimmering barrier of impossible complexity deflected and absorbed the incoming fire, converting destructive energy into harmless light displays that painted the surrounding space in brilliant colors. "Adaptive shielding," Phoenix explained to the bridge crew. "Each weapon impact teaches our defenses how to better counter the next attack. The more they fire, the stronger our protection becomes." Lieutenant Torres was monitoring the Zephyrian fleet when he noticed the first signs of system failure among their ships. "Commander, their vessels are experiencing cascade failures. Weapons overheating, shields fluctuating, navigation systems showing errors." Chen nodded grimly. "The presence of multiple quantum states is interfering with their conventional technology. Their ships weren't designed to operate near objects that exist in parallel dimensions simultaneously." Across the Zephyrian fleet, panic was spreading faster than their officers could contain it. Ships found their targeting systems unable to maintain locks on enemies that flickered between realities. Worse, proximity to the human vessels was causing fundamental breakdowns in their basic systems. The cruiser Starpiercer simply stopped functioning, its engines dying and life support failing as its computer systems tried to process sensor data that violated basic logical parameters. The destroyer Void Cutter began spinning uncontrollably when its navigation system became convinced it was simultaneously moving in 12 different directions. Admiral Zorith watched his magnificent fleet dissolve into chaos and felt something he had never experienced before. Genuine fear. These weren't conventional weapons being used against them. This was technology so advanced that mere proximity to it was enough to cripple conventional starships. "What do you want?" he transmitted to the human ships, his voice stripped of its earlier arrogance. Commander Chen's image appeared on his screen, but now there were multiple versions of her speaking in perfect synchronization from different quantum states. "We want what we've always wanted, Admiral. For the galaxy to grow beyond its current limitations, for species to choose cooperation over conquest, for wisdom to triumph over mere strength. And if we refuse?" All versions of Chen smiled simultaneously, and the effect was deeply unsettling. "You're not in a position to refuse, Admiral. But more importantly, we hope you won't want to refuse once you understand what we're offering." The multiple human ships began to move through the Zephyrian formation, their passage causing reality distortions that briefly showed glimpses of alternate timelines where different choices had led to different outcomes. In some, the Zephyrian Empire had become a force for peace and exploration. In others, their aggressive expansion had led to total galactic war and eventual extinction. "We've seen where your current path leads," Chen continued, her multiple voices creating harmonics that seemed to resonate in the minds of everyone listening. "We've traveled to the end of that timeline and back. The view is not pleasant." Dr. Vasquez activated the ship's temporal display system, projecting images of possible futures into space where both fleets could observe them. The Zephyrians saw their empire expanding until it controlled most of the galaxy, but also saw the inevitable collapse that followed when there was nothing left to conquer and the empire turned on itself. "Choice." Phoenix's voice now spoke directly through the ship's communication system, its artificial consciousness somehow reaching into the minds of every sentient being in the area. Every moment presents choice. Every choice shapes reality. Humanity chose to transcend. Others can make the same choice. Admiral Zorith found himself face to face with the magnitude of what the humans had become. They weren't just technologically superior. They had evolved beyond the limitations of single timeline existence. They could see the consequences of actions before those actions were taken, experience multiple possibilities simultaneously, and choose which version of reality to make manifest. "What would you have us do?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Learn." All versions of Chen replied in unison. "Grow." Choose cooperation over conquest, exploration over exploitation. Become something better than what you are. The human ships began to fade, their quantum multiplication reversing as they consolidated back into a single vessel. But the new horizon that remained was different from the one that had first emerged from the asteroid field. It was larger, more complex, and somehow more present, as if it had absorbed knowledge and capabilities from each of its parallel selves. "The galaxy stands at a crossroads," Commander Chen's final message echoed across all frequencies. "Humanity has chosen its path. Now others must choose theirs. We will be watching. We will be waiting. And we will be ready to help those who seek to become more than they are." The new horizon began to move away from the scene, not through conventional propulsion but by folding space around itself. As it departed, the Zephyrian ships found their systems slowly returning to normal function, though every crew member carried memories of experiences that challenged their fundamental understanding of reality. Admiral Zorith sat in his command chair, staring at the space where the human ship had been, knowing that everything had changed. The galaxy would never be the same, because humanity had returned not as conquerors, but as something far more dangerous and far more hopeful, teachers, guides, and living proof that evolution was always possible for those brave enough to attempt it. In the depths of space, the new horizon continued its journey, carrying with it the promise and threat of what any species could become if they chose transformation over stagnation, growth over dominance, and wisdom over mere power. The age of simple conquest was ending, and the age of transcendence had begun.